The first sign of the apocalypse wasn't a scream. It was silence. For 800 years, the city of Rome had a heartbeat. It was the low, constant roar of 1 billion liters of water rushing through stone arteries day and night. It was the sound of civilization. But in March of 537 AD, the heartbeat stopped. Inside the city, the silence was deafening. The fountains sputtered and died. The great public baths, the lungs of Roman social life, went stagnant. In the darkness, 100,000 people suddenly realized they were trapped in a stone cage with no way to drink. To understand the panic, look at the curator aquarum, the chief water engineer. For centuries, his job was just math and maintenance. He managed the flow rates. He checked for cracks. He trusted the system because the system had always worked. He didn't realize that by optimizing Rome for comfort, he had engineered a death trap. He was standing on top of a machine that required perfect peace to function, and peace was over. We document the mechanical failures of civilization. We analyze the specific moments when complex systems break under the weight of reality. If you want to understand how fragile your world actually is, stick around. To understand how this was even possible, we need to go back. Imagine a city of 1 million people. Now imagine that city thriving without a single electric pump or modern water main. That was ancient Rome. Getting water to that many people was a mind-boggling logistical challenge. Early on, the city relied on the Tiber River and local springs, but as Rome exploded into a sprawling metropolis, it simply wasn't enough. The city was thirsty, and not just for a drink. Rome was a city built on water. It was the foundation of public life and Roman identity. Water fed the grand public baths, the thermae, which were the social and business hubs of the city. It flushed the public latrines and the colossal sewer, the Cloaca Maxima, keeping Rome cleaner than almost any other city in the ancient world. It filled thousands of public fountains where the average Roman, often living in a cramped apartment, fetched their daily water. And, crucially, it powered the mills that ground the grain that fed the city. The Roman solution was one of the greatest engineering feats in human history: the aqueducts. This was a system of 11 massive conduits, stretching for hundreds of miles, delivering a constant supply of fresh water from distant hills directly into the city. And these weren't simple channels. Using little more than gravity, Roman engineers designed a system with an incredibly precise, gentle slope, tunneling through mountains and crossing valleys on the iconic multi-tiered arches we still see today. And the scale of this operation is staggering. At their peak, the aqueducts delivered up to 1 billion liters of water to Rome every single day. The system was managed by a high-ranking official, the curator aquarum, who meticulously documented flow rates and organized repairs. The aqueducts weren't just infrastructure. They were a statement. They were a physical demonstration of Roman might, proof that they could bend the natural world to their will. They announced that wherever Rome went, civilization and its comforts would follow. They were the empire's lifeblood. But that total dependence on a single, miraculous system was about to become a fatal vulnerability. Fast forward to the turning point, March of 537 AD. The Western Roman Empire was long gone, but the city itself endured, now part of the Eastern Roman, or Byzantine, Empire. Rome was about to face its greatest trial. A massive army of Ostrogoths, led by their king, Vitiges, was marching to reclaim the city. Defending it was one of the most brilliant generals of the age, Belisarius. Vitiges, the Gothic king, knew a direct assault on Rome's massive walls would be suicidal. He needed a different strategy, one that would attack the city's very ability to survive. His eyes turned to the magnificent aqueducts striding across the landscape. He realized they weren't just a symbol of Roman power, they were its Achilles heel. In one devastatingly effective move, Vitiges ordered his forces to sever the aqueducts. The historian Procopius, an eyewitness to the siege, recorded what happened next. He tells us the Goths systematically broke them open, ensuring no water could enter the city. For the first time in centuries, the life-giving flow of water into Rome just stopped. The silence must have been deafening. The effects were immediate and horrifying. It wasn't just the thirst, it was the smell. You have to remember, Rome was a machine. It relied on the Cloaca Maxima, the great sewer, to flush the waste of 1 million people into the river. That system required constant rushing water to push the filth out. When the aqueduct stopped, the flushing stopped. The sewer didn't drain, it backed up. Within days, the greatest city on earth began to drown in its own waste. The air itself turned toxic. The refugees weren't just hiding from the Goths, they were trapped in a city that was rapidly becoming an open grave. But the most devastating blow, the one that threatened to starve Rome into submission, was to its food supply. You see, on the Janiculum Hill, a complex of water-powered mills ground most of the grain for Rome's population, which, even after years of decline, numbered around 100,000. These mills were entirely dependent on the flow from one of the aqueducts. When the water stopped, the mill wheels stopped turning. Rome had plenty of grain in its storehouses, but it suddenly had no way to turn it into flour. The city was facing mass starvation. The Goth strategy also transformed the aqueducts into a direct military threat. The massive, empty channels were now potential secret passages into Rome. At one point, Gothic soldiers tried to infiltrate the city through the Aqua Virgo, and were only discovered when a guard noticed the flicker of their torches. Belisarius had no choice but to wall up the aqueduct entrances, turning his city's own lifeline into a sealed tomb. The Goths even fortified the aqueduct arches, using Rome's own engineering against it. The symbol of Roman civilization had become a weapon for its enemies. As panic began to grip a city on the brink of starvation, Belisarius refused to give in. He couldn't magically restore the water, but he could tackle its most critical consequence: the silent grain mills. His solution was a stroke of pure genius. He looked to the one source of water the Goths couldn't possibly cut, the Tiber River. Procopius tells us what he did next. Belisarius had boats tied up in the river's fastest current, likely near a bridge where the water was funneled. He then had floating platforms built between pairs of these boats and mounted water wheels in the gaps. The river's own powerful current turned the wheels, which in turn powered millstones placed on the boats. He had just invented the floating ship mill. Soon, a whole line of these floating factories was anchored in the Tiber, grinding day and night, turning useless grain into life-saving flour. Rome could eat again. The Goths were furious. Their seemingly foolproof plan was failing. They tried to sabotage the mills by floating large logs and even human corpses down the river to smash the wheels. But Belisarius was always one step ahead. He ordered heavy iron chains to be stretched across the river upstream, creating a barrier that caught any debris before it could reach his ingenious mills. Rome was saved from starvation, not by a general's sword, but by an engineer's mind. Despite this incredible ingenuity, the siege dragged on for a brutal year and 9 days. In the end, it was the Goths who broke. Ravaged by the same disease and famine they had hoped to inflict on the Romans, they were forced to abandon the siege in March of 538. Rome had survived, but it was a ghost of its former self. The cutting of the aqueducts was a definitive turning point. Though some were partially repaired, the great system was never fully restored. The broken arches bled water into the surrounding fields, creating swamps that bred malaria. The grand Roman lifestyle of public baths and endless fountains was over for good. Rome's population, which stood at around 100,000 before the siege, collapsed to as low as 30,000 in its aftermath. People abandoned entire districts and returned to drawing water from the Tiber and from wells, just as their ancestors had, 1,000 years before. The infrastructure that had made Rome a megacity was gone, and from its ruins a smaller, poorer medieval city began to emerge. The siege of 537 AD is a brutal lesson in system failure. The Goths didn't need to defeat the Roman legions. They just had to break one pipe. The aqueducts were never fully repaired. The swamps they created bred malaria that haunted the region for 1,000 years. Rome had spent centuries building the most advanced life support system in history. But in doing so, they forgot the golden rule of survival. The more complex your system is, the easier it is to kill. Rome didn't die by the sword. It died of thirst, sitting next to a dry fountain. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like and subscribe so you don't miss what's next.